Among the environmental disasters that have occurred in the United States, the Santa Barbara oil spill of 1969 was one of the worst. At the time, it was the worst oil spill to ever happen in United States history. On January 28, 1969, a Union Oil Company drilling platform located 6 miles off the coast of Santa Barbara, California, suffered a blowout. This caused 3 million gallons of crude oil to escape the ocean floor and seep into the Pacific Ocean. Then, an 800 square mile oil spill formed off the coast of California, where the tides carried the tar-like oil 35 miles onto the California beaches. While most of the oil spread to the coast of Santa Barbara, some traveled to islands close to the California coast, such as Anacapa, Santa Cruz, Santa Rosa, and San Miguel. While many rescuers came to help, the oil still killed thousands of birds, fish, sea lions, and other marine life. The oil had stripped marine birds' feathers of their natural waterproofing, resulting in the death of approximately 9,000 birds. Many fish had also died because of the oil pollution, and many others had fled. This had caused great economic harm to the region's fishermen. Environmentalists blame Union Oil and the U.S. Geological Survey, claiming that the oil spill could have been prevented. The USGS had given Union Oil the drilling permit, ignoring the current federal safety regulations for the company's benefits. Critics claim the blowout could have been prevented if more steel pipe sheeting had been placed inside the drilling hole. The cleanup of the Santa Barbara oil spill took months and costed millions of dollars. Detergents that were used to clean the oil in the water had caused great ecological damage to the area. This environmental disaster brought the environmental issue to the nation's attention. As a result, the California Environmental Quality Act and the National Environmental Policy Act of 1969 was created. The state also banned offshore drilling for the next 16 years. The Environmental Protection Agency was also established by the federal government as a result of the Santa Barbara oil spill of 1969.
The 3 Mile Island was a nuclear reactor near Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Events took place including the melting of a fraction of the nuclear reactor core, which released radioactivity into the environment. The reactor itself was a pressurized water reactor. The accident began at 4 a.m. on March 28, 1979, when the secondary loop pumps shut down due to maintenance. Because of this reactor shutdown, the pressure in the primary loop increased. Because the pressure got so high, a valve opened and let out radioactive water. An indicator light depicted the valve to be closed, when really it was partially stuck open. Many alarms and lights went off, which further confused the operators, which made it harder for them to do the right thing. Once the tanks had overflowed with radioactive water, radioactive gas xenon escaped from the building, resulting in a low-level exposure to the citizens of the gas. From more water leaks, there ended up being a small explosion, causing slight equipment damage. 2 days later, the governor of Pennsylvania had pregnant women and preschool-aged children to evacuate within a 5-mile radius of the plant. In response to the event, there is now an operations oversight organization.
Love Canal became a symbol of the threat of toxic chemical waste to human communities and the environment. The city of Niagara Falls and some federal agencies regularly dumped chemicals and other wastes at the site. Hooker Chemical Company dumped about 21,800 tons of chemical waste. The Niagara Falls Board of Education wanted to buy the site to construct a grade school and playground on it. Hooker Chemical Company refused to sell, pointing out that the site was a chemical dump and not appropriate for a school. The Board of Education persisted and overrode Hooker's refusal by threatening to have the local government condemn the property and force the sale. About 20 years later, many Love Canal residents noticed seepage in their basements and notified authorities, who identified the seepage as toxic chemicals. Federal governments were ignoring the real culprits. The school board had ignored Hooker's repeated warnings, and the sale contract stated that all responsibility shifted to its new owners, the city of Niagara Falls. In August 1978, President Jimmy Carter declared Love Canal a disaster area. Approximately 900 families were evacuated. Hundreds of millions of dollars were spent on cleanup and litigation. One of the most ignored environmental issues became important only 20 years later. Events like these need to be avoided.
Throughout the 60s and 70s, many environmental disasters caught the attention of the American people and the government. Disasters such as Love Canal, where 22,000 tons of chemical waste was dumped into a canal in a residential area, and the Cuyahoga River fires, which were the result of flammable chemicals that had been dumped into the river. Public reactions to these disasters was anger. Environmentalists wanted more government regulations on water pollutants. Due to the pressure they provided, the government set their work on revising the 1948 Clean Water Act to address the environmental disasters. Earlier acts left the job of cleaning up water to the state, but the revision of the act gave the federal government more responsibility when cleaning up water. The 1972 Act set goals to clean up America's lakes and waterways. Though the act was initially vetoed by President Richard Nixon due to his worry about the cost, he called it a, quote, budget wrecker. The act was eventually passed back in Congress after the veto.
The Green New Deal promises many benefits to our economy and environment. Achieving this would not be too hard if the promised 100% green renewable energy by 2030 and 20 million new living wage jobs come with the Green New Deal. Promises like these are what show us what can happen in the future that would benefit everything in many ways. For example, it would benefit the environment greatly if we get 100% renewable energy by 2030. If Earth's temperature rises 2 degrees Celsius, water levels would rise 1.6 feet, wiping out coastlines and cities all over the world. Food supplies would also change, producing certain crops more than others, and an overall decline in crops. We can see the rapid increase in climate change now, with an increase in natural disasters, droughts, heat waves, and drastic changes in temperature. In the Paris Agreement, countries are attempting to cut emissions by percentages like 40. They are also striving to get roughly 32% renewable energy by 2030, which is a step in the right direction, but is not close to enough. The downside to the Green New Deal is that it is supposed to cost a whopping $1 trillion. You may ask how the government is supposed to get that. Currently, the U.S. government spends about $600 billion on military funding each year. The Green Party's solution for this is to cut the military spending in half to compensate for the Green New Deal's budget. While there are many downsides to cutting military budget, it would also bring back troops to their families.